Dallas Races Net, first and third Sunday, 8 p.m., W5FC.
Mr. Chairman, I need to make myself very clear. If we uplink now, Skynet will be in control of your military.
But you'll be in control of Skynet, right?
That is correct, sir.
Skynet.
Does anyone need to use your repeater before we begin the 9 p.m. Skynet? Okay, this is KC50ZT. My name is Carolyn, and I'll be your net control for this section of the DARC Skynet. Skynet is a weekly net called every Saturday night at 9 p.m. concerning the subject of astronomy. Our purpose is to help amateurs become more familiar with the nighttime and daytime sky, astronomy, and space in general. This net is open to all amateurs interested in this topic, and we encourage your participation, comments, and suggestions for this net. Stations with emergency or priority traffic may enter the net at any time by using the plus sign break in your call sign. Do we have any emergency or priority traffic? Okay, this is a direction net, so please do not transmit without direction from net control. And stations are reminded to ID at the end of your transmissions. This weekly net operates on 146.88 repeater with a PL tone of 110.9. Check-ins via Echolink are also possible using the W5FC Dash R station ID or Echolink node 37247. Tonight's topics, astronomy charts, pictures, and live audio-video links are available online. Go to www.w5fc.org right now for the complete list. And please remember to tell others about this popular net. All amateur operators are welcome. You need not be a member of any amateur radio club to participate. And the net is about 90 minutes long, structured in several parts. General announcements, Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas events, also known as where and when you can look through a telescope. Discussion topic of the evening, what can you see in the sky tonight? A featured constellation or object or topic. Recent astronomical discoveries, space exploration and space history. Visible satellite passages over the next couple of days, astronomical questions and answers, and the 73 round. All amateurs licensed to transmit on this frequency are invited to check in. Alright, let's start with low power or short time check-ins. Please come with your call sign, name, and your QTH. So low power, short time check-ins. Go ahead.
Kilo Golf 5, November Alpha. Corky in Capel, short time.
Okay, KG5NNA, Corky, welcome to the net, and I nearly asked you if you had any traffic. That's a big habit. Do we have any other short time or low power check-ins? Please come down.
Whiskey 5, Echo Bravo Bravo, David in Dallas, low power.
Okay, W5EBB, welcome to the net, David, and I've got you down. Anybody else with short time, low power, come now before we move on. Alright, we'll be moving on to general check-ins. Anybody wish to check in, please come now.
This is Whiskey Bravo 5, Oscar Zulu Lima. The name is Brenda, and I'm in DeSoto.
November Tango 5, Tango Mike, Tony in Dallas.
This is Kilo Golf 5, Papa Mike in Richardson.
Bravo Bravo, and I have a news item.
This is Kilo 5, Kilo Tango X-Ray Kelly in Quinlan.
This is Kilo Golf X5, Quebec, X-Ray India, Glen, and Rockwell.
Is November 5, Whiskey Oscar India, William and Allen. This is Kilo 5, Alpha, November, Papa, Allen and Dallas.
This is Kilo Foxtrot 5, Zulu Bravo Lima, Bill, Farmers Branch. Golf 5, Victor Julio Papa, Robert and Richardson.
Let me pick these up and then we'll have some more check-ins. And going back to the top, WB5, the net recognizes WB5OZL, Brenda. KE5ICX, Tom. ITM, Tony. KT5P, Mike. N5BB, Bill. K5KTX, Kelly. KG5QXI with Glenn. N5 K5WOI, William, K5ANT, Alan, KF5ZBL, Bill, KG5VJP, Robert. Any other general check-ins, please come now.
Foxtrot 5, Hotel Mike Sierra, Bill in Grand Prairie.
Quebec Hotel X-Ray, Earl in Grapevine.
Right, the net recognizes HMS. Did I get that right, Bill?
5 HMS.
Oh, okay. Couldn't read my writing. Okay, net recognizes KF5 HMS, Bill. KG5 PMN. You mind giving me your name, please, and where you're located? Names I got at that time, and welcome to the net and KG5QHX. Earl and Grapevine. Alright, we'll have some more general check-ins in a minute, but let's go on to Echolink. If everybody wishing to check in on Echolink, please come now.
Number 5, Yankee, Echo, Oscar, Stephen, San Antonio.
KG5, I need your suffix again, please, and Annie, and recognize that you're in Carrollton.
Sorry, that was Kilo Golf 5, Oscar Victor Uniform, Annie in Carrollton.
Welcome to the net. Hit the wrong key and closed off Echolink. I'm trying to get it back here.
WW2 CBI, Ron in Fairview.
Recognize W2 CBI Ron and WW2 CBI Ron in Fairview. Okay, I believe everybody else in Echolink is checked in, so we'll move to anybody by any means, Echolinker voice. Come on with your call sign, please.
This is November 5, Yankee, Echo, Oscar, Stephen in San Antonio.
Level 5, Juliet, Delta Whiskey, John in Coppell.
That recognizes N5YEO Stephen and K5 JDW John. Alright, we will be having more rounds of check-ins as we go. But let's move on to general announcements. And I'll say, does anybody have any general announcements? And N5BB will get to yours in a minute.
5 KTX.
KTX, go ahead with your announcement.
This is K5 KTX. This is a pretty short one. A couple of weeks ago, months ago, something like that, I had mentioned about the NASA on the Air event that's going on between last December and this coming up December. It's a special event to recognize some big milestones in the history of NASA, and they are celebrating specific events, but also at different times they will be on the air. The different research centers for NASA have their own amateur radio clubs, and they will get on the air. So I noticed that they have a Twitter account, and a couple of days ago they said that N1KSC, that's November 1, Kilo Sierra Charlie, which is Kennedy Space Center, will be on the air tomorrow, that's Sunday, starting at about 1700 UTC for NASA on the Air contacts. And if you will go to their Twitter feed, which is at NASA Radio Clubs, or at N1KSC, to get the details, I think they'll be posting some additional information, probably about what frequencies they'll be on and so forth. Or you can go to their website, which is nasaontheair.wordpress.com. And that's all I've got for right now. This is K5 KTX.
Kelly, does anyone need any fields? N5BB, you said you had an announcement. Go ahead.
Actually have several space-related announcements. I'm now a member of the North Texas chapter of the National Space Society. This is N5BB. The next meeting locally of the National Space Society is tomorrow, Sunday, April the 8th. The local chapter always meets on the second Sunday afternoon of each month. The meeting location is in Spring Creek Barbecue in Irving. This is across Highway 183 from Irving Mall at Beltline. And the address, once I pull it up here, is the address is 3514 West Airport Freeway, Irving 75061. That's Spring Creek Barbecue. The meeting starts at 3:30 p.m. tomorrow afternoon. If you'd like to eat, you can come early, and then the meeting starts at 3:30. The presentation starts at 3:30. The presentation tomorrow is going to be about the Bigelow Aerospace Alpha Station. This is a space station design that essentially looks like big balloons. Rectangular structures which are made strong by the air pressure inside of them. They've already tested one of these at the International Space Station. They launched it a couple of years ago up there. So there's going to be a presentation tomorrow about the future of these Bigelow Aerospace space stations. They are planning on making some independent space stations, an independent space station using some of these Bigelow modules. So that's going to be interesting. Some of the things I have is Exos Aerospace, EXOS Aerospace, has a facility in Caddo Mills, Texas. This is between Dallas and Greenville, out east of I-30. Recently, a few weeks ago, they performed some static tests of a rocket out at that location in Caddo Mills, and it was successful. They have received approval from the federal authorities, and they plan to make a launch sometime within the next couple of months from Spaceport America, which is near Truth of Consequences, New Mexico. This is south of Albuquerque, north of Las Cruces, in kind of south central New Mexico. So that's kind of exciting. That's all I got for now. This is N5EB.
Thank you for that. Does anyone have any questions for Bill?
Juliet, Delta Whiskey. It's Tango Mike. K5JW. I was wondering if this would be a nighttime launch, and if so, how far out will you be able to see this launch? K5JW.
Yeah, this is N5EB.
Go ahead.
Okay. John, I cannot find anything posted yet talking about the exact launch time or date. So I don't think there's an answer to that. As soon as I can find anything, though, I will let people know what I discover. By the way, the Exos has a reusable vehicle mission launch license. So they have a vehicle designed for vertical takeoff and landing, just like some other people have been working on. So it's kind of an exciting thing. We're going to have more than one. We have several companies competing in the reusable launch vehicle arena. And a lot of this work is being done in Texas, both at Caddo Mills, at McGregor, which is near Waco, and then there's a launch site that may get used down near Brownsville, Texas, on the coast, in 5BB.
Thank you for that. And NT5TM, Tony, go ahead.
I just wanted to sneak in an additional announcement whenever that was okay. NT5TM.
Okay, go ahead.
Not quite as exciting as rocket launches, although it is still fun. We do have one more net coming up tonight, the Afterglow Movie discussion at 10:30. We'll be talking about the 1984 classic, 1984, starring John Hurt. That's our movie discussion for tonight. It is available free and legally at archive.org. We have a link in the Facebook group if you'd like to try to start watching it. And we do have more information about other upcoming club activities at W5FC.org. I hope you'll have a look. NT5TM.
thank you for that. And yeah, I would also. This is KC50ZT, and I'd also like to announce that if you're interested in satellites, we have the AMSAT Radio Amateur Satellite Group has 2 nets available to Dallas residents. On Tuesday evenings at 8 p.m., it's on Echolink, so you need Echolink installed and be registered. You can find the net under Groups and AMSAT. And there's a live audio link available on their website at http://www.amsatnet.com. That net originates from Houston. And then we have a local Dallas AMSAT net every Wednesday at 9 p.m. on the Arlington repeater, 147.14 megahertz, and a PL tone of 110.9 with a positive offset. And of course, we have our usual DARC nets every Monday. Let's see, this week will be MCOM 101. And Wednesdays, we have the Veterans Net on the first and third week. Saturdays, of course, we have the TechNet at 7 p.m., Skynet at 9, and the Afterglow Movie after Skynet. And every night we have the National Traffic System training net at 6:30 p.m. And everybody's welcome to check in to any or all of these nets. Afterglow, Tom, do you want to give some information on tonight's net? KC50ZT.
This is KE5ICX, and Tony hit it on the head. Tonight's movie is 1984, which was produced in 1984. So this is my ditty. If you would like to be updated on this every week, you can either go to send an email to info@w5fc.org, or you can send to my call sign, Kilo Echo 5, India Charlie X-Ray @yahoo.com. That way then you can get the weekly updates. We also have the Facebook page, which is Afterglow Movie. That's 2 words, Afterglow Movie. And you'll see all the updates on the movies so you can watch them ahead of time. So this is what we got. Join us for another fun and exciting season of Big Brother. You had better double think when you decide whether you are for and against, or you are for and against our hero, Winston Smith. It's another season of crazy summer hijinks, and this time with Winston is placed in a room with other malcontents from Airstrip 1. What happens next is pure fun. The Ingsoc Oceania Broadcasting Network is proud to present a Room 101 production in association with The Outer Party, Big Brother. Our next Afterglow movie is the classic Turn to Movie, 1984, tonight at 10:30 p.m.
Thank you for that, Tom. And then with this time, I'll take another round of check-ins. If you'd like to check in, please come now. You, David, welcome to the net. And all right, anybody else? Right then, we We'll move on to the Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas events. Let's see, K5, KTX, would you like to take that? H5OZT.
This is K5 KTX. The Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas is the local astronomy club here in the Dallas area, and the monthly meetings are held on the fourth Friday of every month except for November, in which the meeting is on the third Friday due to Thanksgiving, and we usually don't have a meeting in December. The meetings are held at the University of Texas at Dallas campus in Richardson. The meeting begins at 7:30 p.m. in the Science Learning Center, which is SLC Sierra Lima Charlie on the campus map. The best place to park is in Lot H, where we have been given permission to park in orange, gold, or green spaces after 5 p.m. on Friday. You can park anywhere else as long as you choose a green space. Otherwise, you risk getting a ticket. The meeting includes programs presented by members or guest speakers and a slideshow of the current constellation of the month. I do not have the information on who the speaker will be at the April meeting, but that is coming up on the fourth Friday of April. Now, as I mentioned, the meeting begins at 7:30 p.m., but you might want to try to get there by 7 o'clock p.m. because on alternating months, they do have a beginning astronomy class, and then that alternates with a new member orientation. And even if you're not a member of the club, it's interesting information, and you can get some information about our DARC Sky site that we have up in Oklahoma, and a lot of other details about all the things that the club offers. The meetings are free and open to the public. You don't have to be a member to come and sit in on those meetings. We do have some really fantastic speakers, and it's always worth coming out for that. We also host observing parties pretty much every Saturday night beginning at sunset, and each week is at a different location for observing, so make sure that you go to our website, which is texasastro.org. Click on the calendar tab at the top, and you can get all the details for each of the Saturday night star parties. The first Saturday of the month, the star party would normally be held at Spring Park in Garland. However, if you've been outside, you probably know that it's not exactly good weather conditions. It's cold and windy, and the observing field at Spring Park is full of water tonight, so they have canceled that event. So we can try again next weekend, next Saturday. The second Saturday is always at Frisco Common Park in Frisco. Very nice park there. Where they turn out the lights for us on the Saturday night, on the second Saturday night. Third Saturday is in Cedar Hill at J.W. Williams Park. And the fourth Saturday is Stars on the Rock at Lakeshore Park in Rockwall. Another good dark location for observing. Normally start around sunset, but if you come a little bit early, sometimes people will have their solar telescopes out to look at the sun before it sets, which is always a neat thing to do, to look through a solar telescope, lets you safely look at the sun and look for any sunspots, which are getting hard to come by these days, but still kind of a neat thing to look at if you can come. These are free and open to the public as well, very family-friendly events, and another great thing about this is if you are thinking about purchasing a telescope but you're not quite sure what to get, this is a great place to look through all different types of telescopes, Dobsonians, and just all kinds of reflectors and refractors, and you can ask questions of the people that own those telescopes, and they love to talk about their equipment and to talk about eyepieces and mounts and everything that you would want to know. So it's a great opportunity to get that information. Let me just tell you quickly about some other events that are outside our normal calendar that are coming up very quickly. Next Saturday, Saturday, weather permitting, we will have our spring star party at Palo Pinto Mountain State Park. Palo Pinto Mountain State Park is not quite a state park yet. They're still waiting to get funds in order to develop it, but it has been developed enough, and twice a year we, along with, I believe, the Fort Worth Astronomical Society, will host the star party, and so that's coming up, weather permitting, this next Saturday, April the 14th, beginning at 5 o'clock p.m. It's near the town of Strawn, Texas, and so it's just west of Weatherford. And if you go to our calendar, which again is at texasastro.org, and if you go to April the 14th and click on the link for this event, it will give you the directions on how to get there. I recommend that you join the Texas Astronomical Society Facebook page because depending on the weather, they will post a go or no-go for each of our events on that Facebook page. You don't have to be a member of the club in order to be on that Facebook page. And the bad weather backup date for the Palo Pinto Mountains Star Party is April the 21st. Speaking of April the 21st, we have another event that's going to be at the Mesquite Planetarium. And the Mesquite Planetarium is very easy to find if you're driving along 635 and you see that big, huge, giant radio tower that's near, I believe that's West Mesquite High School. The planetarium sits right there next to the stadium. And we will have a star party there from 7 to 9 p.m. And that event, I believe, will be a go no matter the weather. They're going to have some indoor activities going on, and so save the date for that one as well. Next star party at the Farmers Branch Historical Park is scheduled for Tuesday, April the 24th. Again, this is a nice park. They turn off the lights for us at this event too, and we have a huge field to set up on, and it's always one of the best star parties that we have each month. The backup date will be the Thursday after that, but April the 24th, the Farmers Branch Historical Park near downtown Farmers Branch. One final announcement about something that is coming up next weekend. The EarthX Film is a 21st Century Film Festival that uses the power of film and emerging media to raise awareness of environmental and social global issues. From Friday, April the 13th through Sunday, April the 22nd, which is Earth Day, the EarthX Film will present over 60 feature and short documentaries at screenings and events across the city. And the Texas Astronomical Society is going to be promoting one particular film that's called The Farthest. And The Farthest documents humankind's venture through our solar system and out into interstellar space. In 1977, NASA launched a mission so unique in its scope, mission, and reach that we will never see again in our lifetime. Dubbed the Grand Tour, the Voyager mission sent 2 probes through our solar system just in time for a rare alignment that allowed them to make a successful exploration of the outer planets of our solar system and their moons for the first time. What ensued was a fantastic fact-finding mission that was fruitful beyond expectations. Voyager gave us the first close-up images of Jupiter's red spot, the volcanoes of Io, Saturn's rings and spokes, the unexpected effects of Uranus's tilt and rotation, and the lovely planet of Neptune. The Farthest pays homage to the incredible mission gathering the scientists involved in the 40-year-old project to recount how it went down. And so if you go to the Texas Astronomical Society Facebook page, there is a link there where you can get complimentary tickets. The showing will be Sunday, April the 15th from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. at the Angelica Film Center in Dallas on East Mockingbird Lane. I think that's all I've got. This is K5KTX. Back to you.
Thank you for that, Kelly. Does anyone have any questions on that? That sounds very interesting. All right, this is KC50ZT, and we'll move on to our topic for tonight. This was a news story that came through thought was very interesting, and I've titled it Icarus. Are yet detected. So when something reaches a distance of tens of billions of light years away, there's going to be a slim chance we can see it. For the Hubble Space Telescope to catch these faint flickers of light, they have to be something with a pretty powerful glow, like supernova, gamma ray burst, or bright galaxies. But something recently happened. Elizabeth Howell at space.com reports that using a special technique, the Hubble caught a glimpse of a regular old star that lies 9 billion light years away, the most distant single star yet detected. I did send some pictures of the galaxy and then the star, but we'll get to that in a minute. The new star is officially named, believe it or not, MACS J1149 plus 2223 Lensed Star 1. But the researchers have mercifully given it the nickname Icarus. They spotted this star while looking at a distant supernova called SN Refsdal, that's REFSDAL, discovered in 2014. And they wanted to get a better look at this supernova, so they used a technique called gravitational lensing. And we've heard about this before and mentioned it. This is when the gravity of supermassive objects, like galaxies or different things, bend and amplify the light from behind them. And astronomers can exploit this property, lining their faint object up with a massive one to get a better look. When the astronomers discovered Icarus, they were using a galaxy cluster 5 billion light years away in tonight's constellation Leo to get a better look at the Nova Refsdal. And as a co-author of the study, Matilda Jowzak of Durham University told Nicola Davis at The Guardian, I guess it's a paper, that the team had been monitoring Refsdal on a regular basis when they spotted a region that seemed to be growing brighter over time. So they started calling this the Icarus Region. If you're looking on the screen, two different photos. On the top one, you don't see Icarus. You do on the bottom one. But this change in intensity was thanks to the passing of a star within the galaxy cluster about the size of our own sun. And of course, while this galaxy cluster was acting as a gravitational lens for the nova, this one star passed directly in front of Icarus and intensified the magnifying effect. Researchers estimate that Icarus was magnified more than 2,000 times. And this comes from the journal Nature Astronomy. And it says, for the first time ever, we're seeing an individual normal star. Not a supernova, not a gamma ray burst, but a single stable star at a distance of, believe it or not, 9 billion light years. University of California, Berkeley astronomer Alex Filippenko says in a press release, these gravitational lenses are amazing cosmic telescopes. Examining this light coming from Icarus, the researchers determined that it's a blue supergiant, which is hotter, larger, and could even be hundreds of thousands of times brighter than our own sun. Still, it would have been impossible to see without the effects of this gravitational lens. However, Icarus probably no longer exists. Blue giants can't survive for 9 billion years. And the star is likely collapsed into a black hole or neutron star many years ago, but the light just hadn't reached us yet. We know it's there. It's possible we could still get an even closer look. Movement of stars within the galaxy cluster might create an even more powerful lens in the future, amplifying the star as much as 10,000 times. And as they say, there are alignments like this all over the place as background stars or stars in the lensing galaxies move around. This is opening up the possibility of studying very distant stars dating from the early universe, just as we've been using gravitational lensing to study distant galaxies. And for this type of research, nature has provided us with a larger telescope than we can possibly ever build. And this is not the first time gravitational lensing has given us a glimpse into the past that wouldn't be possible with a backyard telescope. In January, astronomers announced they had imaged a galaxy 13.3 billion light years away, again using the gravitational lensing. This is the farthest galaxy ever observed. And in February, researchers announced that lensing helped them find possible signs of planets outside our own galaxy. So this discovery and some of the other more recent ones is opening up the possibility of a whole new technique to observe the far distant objects. Gravitational lensing, that way that we would be able to build a telescope to observe. So this may be opening up a whole new field of astronomy. And so we should keep watching for stories on this. Does anyone have any questions? And we'll have another. Do we have anybody else wishing to check in before we move on?
This is Kilo Foxtrot 5, Papa Delta Sierra, Billy and Sherman on Echolink.
Farthest. Well, good evening, Billy. Got you down, and all right, we'll move on to what can you see in the sky tonight? And Tom, if you'll take it, KH50ZT.
Thank you, Miss Carolyn. This is KE5ICX, and all my information comes from earthsky.org. You can go to their website. By the way, the earthsky.org/tonight will give you exactly what you can see in the sky tonight, as well as the rest of the week. This is what they say for this week. We have the following. The last quarter moon rises around midnight, 1 a.m. if you're in daylight time. The last quarter moon that you'll see late at night is on April 7th or early in the morning on April 8th. It is aligned with 2018's closest apogee. That is the closest of the moon's farthest points in its monthly orbit. As there's no surprise because the Earth's closest apogee often aligns with the quarter moon. There will be a total of lunar I guess there's supposed to be a number here, 13, I guess. That is 13 times this year. The moon will swing out from the farthest point to its monthly orbit. But as often happens, it's this month's lunar apogee, the one most closely aligning with the quarter moon, that gives us the year's closest far moon. This is easily the year's closest coincidence of quarter moon and lunar apogee, with the two events taking place less than 2 hours apart. Citistat here is last quarter moon, April 8th at 7:18 UTC time, and then lunar apogee, April 8th at 5:32 UTC time. At U.S. time zones, the moon reaches its last quarter phase on April 8th at 3:18 and 2:18 Central time, and let's see, but that's not all. The lunar apogee, the moon's closest point to Earth in its monthly orbit, aligning most closely with the quarter moon, often presents the year's farthest apogee, perigee, near the moon. Oh, I hope I did that right. 7 lunar months, 7 returns to the last quarter moon. After this last quarter moon on April 8th, the last quarter moon will pair up with the lunar perigee instead of the lunar apogee on October 31st of 2018. '18's 14 perigees, the last quarter moon on October 31st, will coincide with the most distant perigee, or close moon, of 2018. The last quarter moon is October 31st, 2018 at 1640 UTC time. Lunar perigee is October 31st at 2005 UTC time at 370,000 kilometers. Whew. Want to know what the closest perigee and closest apogee and farthest perigee will happen in 2019? There's a lunar cycle whereby 14 lunar months, almost exactly equal to 15 returns to perigee or apogee. A lunar month refers to the time period between successive returns to the same phase. A mean period of 29.53059 days. An anomalistic month refers to successive returns to perigee or successive returns to apogee. A period of 27.554555 days. Brace yourself. Math. 14 lunar months, returns to the last quarter moon, times 29.53059 days is equal to 413.428 days. 15 anomalistic months, returns to the lunar apogee, times 27.55455 days is equal to 413.318 days. Therefore, the last quarter moon and lunar apogee will realign in a period of about 413 days, 1 year and 18 days. We can expect the last quarter moon to showcase 2019's closest apogee or far moon on May 26, 2019, and then for the last quarter moon to present 2019's farthest perigee, close moon, on December 18, 2019. So, the bottom line is, if you figured that all out, the last quarter moon you'll see late at night on April 7th or early in the morning on April 8th is aligned with 2018's closest apogee, that is, the closest of the moon's farthest points in its monthly orbit. And that's no surprise because the year's closest apogee often aligns with the quarter moon. This from the U.S. Naval Observatory, hopefully easier. Let's see. The moon swings low along the southern reaches of the ecliptic this week, wending her way past the morning parade of bright planets that are drifting through the summer constellations. Last quarter occurs on the 7th at 3:17 Eastern Daylight. Luna starts the week just to the east of the bright Jupiter, then cozies up to Mars and Saturn on the evening of the 7th. By the week's end, she moves into the dim star fields and the rising autumnal constellations. Bright constellations linger in the early evening sky. By the end of the evening twilight, around 9 p.m., you can still find Orion in the southwestern sky, surrounded by the bright stars of the Great Winter Circle. Act quickly if you want to view celestial gems like the Pleiades or the Great Orion Nebula. They both set well before midnight. At this time, look for the twin stars of Gemini, Castor, and Pollux high in the west, and the star Regulus in Leo to the east of the meridian. In between these two constellations is a small group of third and fourth magnitude stars that mark the location of the zodiacal constellation of Cancer the Crab. The constellation itself is not much to look at, but if you point a pair of binoculars toward it, you'll see a scattered group of several dozen stars that make up the star cluster known as the Beehive or the Priscape. Under dark skies, you can see it as a nebulous patch of light, and it is one of the first such to resolve into about 40 stars. First such nebulae to be investigated by Galileo and his primitive telescope in 1609. To resolve it into about 40 stars, and you should be able to see that many in binoculars. Large telescopes reveal about 1,000 cluster members, most of which are very low mass red dwarf stars. It lies about 580 light years from us and is one of the closest large star clusters in the solar system. Hour approaches, the brightest stars of spring begin to take over the night. Regulus and his companions in Leo are near the meridian, and the Big Dipper asterism can be found almost directly overhead. You can follow the arc of the Dipper's handles to the bright star Arcturus, the fourth brightest star in the sky, and then drive a spike to Spica, the brightest star in the sprawling constellation of Virgo. The evening twilight hour is dominated by the dazzle of the bright planet Venus, which shines high in the west. She becomes visible within minutes of sunset in a clear sky and remains visible until about 9 p.m. Jupiter rises at around 10:30 p.m. and should be easily visible in the southwest by midnight. Old Jove is now second only to Venus in brightness and will move into better evening visibility over the course of the month. He is currently drifting westward among the stars of another faint zodiacal constellation, Libra the Scales. Early risers will get the best views of Mars and Saturn, which are currently located just above the top of the Teapot asterism in Sagittarius. They start the week just over a week apart, but over the course of the week, Mars drifts eastward from the ringed planet. It'll be 5 degrees apart by the week's end. Look for the great pre-dawn photo opportunity of the morning of the 7th, when the last quarter moon joins the planetary pair. And with that, I send the net back to Miss Carolyn, KC50ZT from KE5ICX.
Thank you, Tom, and We can just hope for some mornings without clouds now to view those planets. This is KC50Z2. We're going to move on to our constellation for tonight. And last week we started Leo. Well, tonight we're going to look at the western part of Leo, part 2. And this topic, that galaxy that they discovered that lends that star, that's a galaxy cluster in Leo. I don't know which one, but anyway, looking at a couple of the stars, of course, the most obvious one is the nebula, or Beta, the second brightest star in Leo. It's a type A, magnitude 2.1, and it's a young one, only less than 400 million years old. And then, like Regulus, and we covered last week, it's a rapid rotator and exhibits a strong infrared, which suggests it may have a circumstellar debris disk of dust in its orbit. And then we have Delta Leonis, also known as Zosma, Z-O-S-M-A, magnitude 2.56, and like the other two, a rapid rotator. It's a main sequence star, type A, and in about 600 million years it will become a red giant. This is Wolf 359. It's a red dwarf, class M. It's faint, magnitude 13.5, but it's close, only 7.78 light years away. And despite its closeness to the sun, of course, it can only be seen with a large telescope. It is one of the lowest mass stars ever discovered, as well as one of the faintest. The star is estimated to be less than 1 billion years old, and it has a relatively high proper motion. Wasn't enough, it's classified as a flare star, and it can undergo dramatic increases in luminosity for several minutes as a result of magnetic activity on its surface. Flares from the star emit strong bursts of gamma rays and X-ray radiation. As I said, Wolf 359 is one of the closest stars to the sun. The only ones closer are Alpha Centauri and one called Barnard's star in Ophiuchus that are closer. And because of this closeness to Earth, it's often mentioned in works of fiction. Star Trek fans will recognize it as the location of the Battle of Wolf 359, when the Borg, led by the assimilated Captain Picard, obliterate the Starfleet ships, leaving a few survivors, among them Benjamin Sisko, the future captain of Deep Space Nine. And this star was also famously mentioned in an episode of The Outer Limits, which I don't know which episode, because I don't remember seeing one of that. But of course, Leo has some deep sky objects. In fact, it has some recognized groups of galaxies that we mentioned last week, the Leo 1 and Leo 2 groups, and the Leo triplet, M65, 66, and NGC 3628, which we'll look at here M65 is an intermediate spiral galaxy at magnitude 10.25. And like I said, these three galaxies, 65, 66, and NGC 362828, form the famous Leo triplet galaxy group. Now, this galaxy doesn't have much dust and gas, and most of the stars are old. And also, its disk appears slightly warped, which, along with some recent starburst activity, suggests that the galaxy is actually interacting with another object. In the trio is a beautiful galaxy, M66. It's an intermediate spiral galaxy at magnitude 8.9. And it's notable for its dust lanes and bright star clusters. And I think 66 and NGC 3628 had an encounter in the past. And the gravitational interaction between the two resulted in an extremely high central mass concentration at 66 and a resolved non-co-rotating clump of H1 material being removed from one of its spiral arms. Third one in the group, NGC 3628, is an unbarred spiral galaxy, but it hides its spiral structure because it's seen perfectly edge-on, as you can see in the photo. Its most distinctive feature is a dark band of dust along the plane of the disk, and it's visibly distorted outwards because of the gravitational interaction between it and its bullying companions. This boxy or peanut-shaped bulge, seen as a faint X shape, is formed mainly of young stars, gas, and dust, which create the away from the plane of the rest of the galaxy. And we didn't have a photo for this, but we have a NGC 3607, an ice spiral galaxy, magnitude 10.8. It's a member of the Leo 2 group of galaxies, and then we have NGC 3626, and it's a medium tightness spiral in magnitude 10.6. And this is in the vicinity of the bright star Gosma that we mentioned. And it also belongs to another group, an NGC 3607 group. It's one of the many Leo groups of galaxies. Last object is NGC 3593, a spiral galaxy, magnitude 12.6. And then we have a 3596, an intermediate spiral, magnitude 12. And you can find this below the bright star Theta Leonis. So Leo is full of these galaxies that make very interesting observing, and as in the case of Icarus, they have helped contribute to the new discovery. So take a look at this constellation and enjoy it. Questions before we move on? Right, we'll move on to some more check-ins. Do we have anybody wishing to check in? Right, we'll move on to recent astronomical discoveries. And Brenda, I'll turn it over to you, KT50ZT.
W5OZL. We're running a little short on time tonight, so I'm just going to read half of each of these articles. One is entitled, Paucity of Phosphorus Hints at Precarious Path for Extraterrestrial Life. Work by Cardiff University astronomers suggests that there may be a cosmic lack of a chemical element essential to life. Dr. Jane Greaves and Dr. Phil Segan will present the results of the European Week of Astronomy and Space Science in Liverpool. Greaves has been searching for phosphorus in the universe because of its link to life on Earth. If this element with the chemical code P is lacking in other parts of the cosmos, then it could be difficult for extraterrestrial life to exist. She explains phosphorus is just one of 6 chemical elements on which Earth organisms depend, and is crucial to the compound adenosine triphosphate, ATP, which cells use to store and transfer energy. Astronomers have just started to pay attention to the cosmic origins of phosphorus and found quite a few surprises. In particular, P is created in supernovae, the explosions of massive stars, but the amounts seen so far don't match our computer models. I wondered what the implications were for life on other planets if unpredictable amounts of P are spat out into space and later used in the construction of new planets. The team used the UK's William Herschel telescope, sited on La Palma in the Canary Islands, to observe infrared light from phosphorus and iron in the Crab Nebula, a supernova remnant about 6,500 light years away in the direction of the constellation of Taurus. Segan, an expert on these stellar remnants, says this is only the second such study of phosphorus that has been made. The first looked at the Cassiopeia A supernova remnant, so we were able to compare 2 different stellar explosions and see if they ejected different proportions of phosphorus and iron. The first element supports life, while the second is a major part of our planet's core. Half that article, so I'm going to move on. This is in ScienceDaily.com, and the link is there, so you can go and look at the whole article if you want. The other article is entitled, Tens of Thousands of Black Holes May Exist in Milky Way's Center. A Columbia University-led team of astrophysicists has discovered a dozen black holes gathered around Sagittarius A, the supermassive black hole in the center of the Milky Way galaxy. The finding is the first to support a decades-old prediction, opening up myriad opportunities to better understand the universe. Everything you'd want to learn about the way big black holes interact with little black holes, you can learn by studying this distribution, said Columbia astrophysicist Chuck Haley, co-director of the Columbia Astrophysics Lab and lead author on the study. The Milky Way is really the only galaxy we have where we can study how supermassive black holes interact with little ones, because we simply can't see their interactions in other galaxies. In a sense, this is the only laboratory we have to study this phenomenon. For more than 2 decades, researchers have searched unsuccessfully for evidence to support a theory that thousands of black holes surround supermassive black holes at the center of large galaxies. There are only about 5 dozen known black holes in the entire galaxy, 100,000 light years wide, and there are supposed to be 10,000 to 20,000 of these things in a region just 6 light years wide that no one has been able to find, Haley said, adding that extensive fruitless searches have been made for black holes around Sagittarius A.
the closest SMBH, that's supermassive black hole, to Earth, and therefore the easiest to study. There hasn't been much credible evidence. He explained that Sagittarius A is surrounded by a halo of gas and dust that provides the perfect breeding ground for the birth of massive stars, which live, die, and can turn into black holes there. Additionally, black holes from outside the halo are believed to fall into the influence of the SMBH as they lose their energy, causing them to be pulled into the vicinity of the SMBH, where they are held captive by its force. While most of the trapped black holes remain isolated, some capture and bind to a passing star, forming a stellar binary. Researchers believe there is heavy concentration of these isolated and mated black holes in the galactic center, forming a density cusp which gets more crowded as distance to the SMBH decreases. In the past, failed attempts to find evidence of such a cusp have focused on looking for the bright burst of X-ray glow that sometimes occurs in black hole binaries. All right, I'm going to quit there. So I'll send this back to the net. This is WB5OZL. Looking forward to seeing what they find. All right, Kelly, you want to take up space exploration and history?
This is K5KTX. Starting next year, scientists will get their first look deep below the surface of Mars. That's when NASA will send the first robotic lander dedicated to exploring the planet's subsurface. InSight, which stands for Interior Exploration Using Seismic Investigations, will study Mars quakes to learn about the Martian crust, mantle, and core. Doing so could help answer a big question: how are planets born? Planning on doing. Seismology, the study of quakes, has already revealed some of the answers here on Earth, said Bruce Bannert, InSight's principal investigator at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, California. But Earth has been churning its geological record for billions of years, hiding its most ancient history. Mars, at half the size of Earth, churns far less. It's a fossil planet, preserving the history of its early birth. During formation, this ball of featureless rock metamorphosed into a diverse and fascinating planet, almost like butterfly, Bannert said. We want to use seismology to learn why Mars formed the way it did and how planets take shape in general. Crack or shift, they give off seismic waves that bounce throughout a planet. These waves, better known as quakes, travel at different speeds depending on the geologic material they travel through. Seismometers, like InSight's SEIS instrument, measure the size, frequency, and speed of these quakes, offering scientists a snapshot of the material they pass through. A seismometer is like a camera that takes an image of a planet's interior, Bannert said. It's a bit like taking a CT scan of a planet. This geologic record includes lighter rocks and minerals, to form the Martian mantle and core. By learning about the layering of these materials, scientists can explain why some rocky planets turn into an Earth rather than a Mars or Venus, a factor that is essential to understanding where life can appear in the universe. It will give InSight a snapshot of the planet's interior. The InSight team estimates the spacecraft will see between a couple dozen to several hundred quakes over the course of the mission. Small meteorites, which pass through the thin Martian atmosphere on a regular basis, will also serve as seismic snapshots. It will be a fuzzy picture at first, but the more quakes we see, the sharper it will get, Bannert said. One challenge will be getting a complete look at Mars using only one location. Most seismology on Earth takes measurements from multiple stations. InSight will have the planet's only seismometer, requiring scientists to parse the data in creative ways. We have to get clever, Bannert said. We can measure how various waves from the same quake bounce off things and hit the station at different times. The Apollo missions included 4 seismometers for the moon. Astronauts exploded mortar rounds to create vibrations, offering a peak about 328 feet under the surface. They crashed the upper stages of rockets into the moon, producing waves that enabled them to probe its crust. They also detected thousands of genuine moonquakes and meteorite impacts. Landers attempted to conduct seismology on Mars in the late 1970s, but those seismometers were located on top of the landers, which swayed in the wind on legs equipped with shock absorbers. It was a handicapped experiment, Bannert said. I joked that we didn't do seismology on Mars. We did it 3 feet above Mars. More than seismology. The Doppler shift from a radio signal on the lander can reveal whether the planet's core is still molten. A self-burrowing probe is designed to measure heat from the interior. Wind pressure and temperature sensors will allow scientists to subtract vibrational noise caused by weather. Combining all this data will give us the most complete picture of Mars yet. And InSight is scheduled to launch May the 5th from the west coast of the United States, from Vandenberg Air Force Base. So if you're going to be in California or near Vandenberg Air Force Base around May the 5th, you might get to see the launch, which would be kind of neat. Weather satellite was launched. The TEROS program, which is Television Infrared Observation Satellite, was NASA's first experimental step to determine if satellites could be useful in the study of the Earth. At that time, the effectiveness of satellite observations was still unproven. Since satellites were a new technology, the TEROS program also tested various design issues for spacecraft, instruments, data, and operational parameters. The goal was to improve satellite applications for Earthbound decisions, such as should we evacuate the coast because of a hurricane? President Eisenhower proposed the creation of what is now NASA in an article of draft legislation sent to Congress. He originally proposed to establish a National Aeronautics and Space Agency built around the National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics, or NACA. The word agency was changed to administration at the behest of Eileen Galloway, who worked for the Congressional Research Service. She believed that an administration with an administrator would have more power than a mere agency with a director. After hearings that spring, the legislation was passed, and Eisenhower signed the National Aeronautics and Space Act into law on July 29, 1958. NASA began formal operations on October the 1st of the same year. Wow, I can't believe this next one. Also on April the 2nd, back in 1968, 50 years ago, the film 2001: A Space Odyssey premiered this week. It was produced and directed by Stanley Kubrick with a screenplay by Kubrick and Arthur C. Clarke. The film's premise of an extensive space infrastructure, including a large orbiting space station, staffed by international crew members with regular trips to a lunar base, was visionary and highly optimistic at a time of great uncertainty. But some of the technological advances imagined have since come to pass. April the 3rd, back in 1966, Luna 10 entered lunar orbit and became the first human-made object to orbit the moon or any celestial body beyond Earth. The Soviet probe launched on March 31st following the failure of a mission earlier that month, which had never left Earth orbit. During operation, over the course of 56 days, Luna 10 gathered data on the moon's magnetic field, its radiation belts, cosmic radiation, and micrometeoroid density. Tracking data showing the spacecraft's orbit was being distorted by irregularities in the moon's gravitational field provided that first evidence that the moon's internal composition wasn't uniform. Last contact was made on May 30th, 1966. April the 5th, 1991, the STS Atlantis space shuttle launched carrying the Compton Gamma Ray Observatory. The Gamma Ray Observatory was the second of the Great Observatory series to be launched. The series also included the Hubble Space Telescope, the Chandra X-ray Observatory, and the Spitzer Space Telescope. Compton kept watch for gamma ray bursts for nearly 9 years. After losing a critical gyroscope, the mission was ended and the 17-ton Compton Observatory was intentionally deorbited in June of 2000. This was the first time that NASA had intentionally made a controlled deorbit of a satellite. It burned up over the Pacific Ocean. And finally, April the 7th, 2001, the Mars Odyssey spacecraft launched. It entered orbit around Mars on October the 24th, 2001, and has been working there ever since. The primary science mission of Odyssey was to map the distribution of a variety of chemicals and minerals on the Martian surface. Named in tribute to Arthur C. Clarke's 2001 A Space Odyssey, Mars Odyssey has proved an essential tool for Mars exploration, and since 2010 has held the record for the longest surviving active spacecraft at Mars. With the planned science mission of Odyssey completed in August 2004, the orbiter's continuing mission has included serving as a communication relay for other spacecraft, most notably the rovers on the Martian surface. Odyssey also helped analyze potential landing sites for the Mars exploration rover Spirit and Opportunity, the Phoenix mission, and Curiosity rover. And that's all I've got. This is K5KTX. Back to the net.
Thank you for that, Kelly. This is KT50ZD. Tom, do you want to do any satellites tonight?
I'll go ahead and give a couple out. There aren't a lot of passes for tonight anyway, so yeah, I'll go ahead and do that. We have the International Space Station. It does have a pass. By the way, you can go to heavens-above, heavens with a hyphen, above.com. You can get all this information. Just plug in your longitude and latitude, and you can get this as well as amateur satellites and their passes as well for communication purposes. So our first pass, our best pass for the International Space Station is April 12th. That one is a minus 3.5 magnitude. It rises at 2103 local time out of the northwest, reaches the highest point at 62 degrees at 2106, and then falls at 2107. That's a pretty good pass. If you're looking at the video, you can see that as well. Goes through Perseus, Gemini, through Hydra. Of course, what doesn't go through Hydra, and then disappears in shadow in the southeast. Citistat is another satellite that's in orbit. This one has three good passes. One is on April 10th. 2.9 magnitude at 2051 local time. That's 8:51 in the evening out of the south-southeast. It almost reaches overhead at 2056 and then falls at 2102. That one goes, as I mentioned, directly overhead through Cepheus, Leo Minor. Well, let me get in the right direction. Let's see. Through Hydra, of course, Sexton, Leo, our constellation this evening, and then through Cepheus. The second one is April 13th, same satellite, two passes. The better one of the two is at 2040 local time, reaches its highest point at 2045, and then falls at 2050. So that's a pretty long pass. That is a complete pass. It goes from south to north, going through Hydra again, Leo Minor, Ursa Major, Ursa Minor, and then on over. And you should be able to see this, even though it seems like it's a relatively lower magnitude. It actually can be seen. And then the last is April 15th. That's a 3.2 magnitude at 2106 out of the south. Reaches its highest point at 2111, and then falls at 2116.
Normal state.
That one also pretty much a similar path as we had before. This one goes through, let's see here, Canis Minor links, the unpronounceable Camelopardalis, so I know I'm very bad at that, Cassiopeia, right on the horizon out of the north. That's it from me. Those are the passes. Again, heaven-above if you want to go ahead and find these things, heaven-above.com. Back to net control. This is KE5ICX.
Tom, and since we are nearly 10:30, we're going to have one last round of check-ins for anybody. Please come now, and this will be final call.
I'm completely operational, and all my circuits are functioning perfectly.
Afterglow Movie Net.
This is Bravo number 4, Mike, Foxtrot, India, WB4MFI. Ted, low power, Dallas.
Recognizes WB4MFI and KE5ZYO. Welcome to the net, and since it was final call, tonight we had 25 hams participating on the air. And thank you to all who checked in this evening. We hope you'll join us here next week and every Saturday night at 9 p.m. to discuss astronomy, space, and space exploration. Remember, on this net, the sky is never the limit. And we're always looking for net control stations for this and other DARC nets. If you'd like to try your hand at this, contact any of the net controls by sending an email to nets@w5fc.org. And you can follow topics and discussion about this net and astronomy in general on Facebook and Twitter, as well as our audio and video streams, video archives, other useful internet resources by going to w5fc.org. So until next Saturday night, this is KT50ZT, Carolyn, and I will be closing the net at 10:31 p.m. local time and returning the repeater to normal amateur news. 73 everybody, and enjoy all your evenings discovering the universe. This is KT50ZT.
CX, we're going to take about a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back and discuss the movie 1984. Back in 5, KE5ICX.
Echo 5, Oscar Zulu Lima, here for the Afterglow Net. And our fine entertainment this evening is the movie 1984 from the year 1984 and from the George Orwell book 1984. K5ICX, would you like to do the honors of a synopsis of this movie? Thank you.
ACX, the Afterglow. All right, Wikipedia tells us the following: 1984, which they wrote out as 1984, is also known as 1984. The numerals is a British dystopian science fiction film written and directed by Michael Radford, based upon George Orwell's novel of the same name. It starred John Hurt, Richard Burton, Susanna Hamilton, and Cyril Cusack. The film follows the life of Winston Smith, a low-ranking civil servant in a post-disaster London ruled by Oceania, which is a totalitarian superstate. Smith, played by Hurt, struggles to maintain his sanity and his grip on reality as the regime's overwhelming power and influence persecutes individualism and individual thinking on both political and personal level. The film, which features Burton's last screen appearance, is dedicated to him at the end of the film. The film was nominated for a BAFTA Award for Best Art Direction and won 2 Evening Standard British Film Awards for Best Film and Best Actor. The synopsis is long, so I'll just leave it to the first 2 paragraphs here, and then we can talk about everything else. There's plenty, too. In a dystopia 1984, Winston Smith endures a squalid existence in a totalitarian superstate of Oceania under the constant surveillance of the thought police. The story takes place in London, the capital city of the territory of Airstrip 1, formerly either England or Britain, and that's in quotes. Winston works in a small office cubicle at the Ministry of Truth, rewriting history in accordance with the dictates of the party and its supreme figurehead, Big Brother. Man haunted by painful memories and restless desires, Winston is an everyman who keeps the secret diary in his private thoughts, thus creating evidence of his thought kind. I'm going to leave it at that point. It goes into some detail, which I'm pretty sure that we will cover in our discussions this evening. So I'll send it back to Net Control. This is KE5ICX.
Okay, thank you, Tom. We'll now take check-ins. I want your call sign, your name, your QTH, and whether you have seen the movie. And when we get that, we'll go through the rotation and talk about this fine film. And also, you might mention whether your own life is as dystopian as this. Probably the worst place in the world that I would want to live. I will say that. All right, short time and low power. Please come now. Well, I do hope somebody comes to our party. Let's move on to general check-ins. Please come now.
Zulu Yankee Oscar.
5. Hotel Yankee Papa, Tom in Irving, and yes, we saw the movie.
45, Oscar Zulu Tango, Carolyn in Louisville, and I saw the movie, KH50ZT.
Kilo Foxtrot 5 Tango Sierra Kilo, Burl in Dallas. I did see the movie.
So 5, Juliet, Delta Whiskey, Johnny Coppell. I have never seen the movie despite its status, and I'll be lingering in the background this evening. K5JW.
Go 5, Tango Mike, Tony in Dallas, and we have both seen the movie and read the book.
Echo 5, India, Charlie X-Ray, Tom, Louisville, of course, I saw the movie.
Our first check-in, Jay, I missed your call, Kilo Echo 5, and I missed the rest of it. Would you please come back with that?
Yes, ma'am. Zulu Yankee Oscar.
Okay, K5ZYO, Jay, N5HYP, Tom, KC5OZT, Carolyn, KF5TSK, Burl, K5JDW, John. I won't call on you since you said not to, but feel free to jump in if you have a comment. And T5TM, Tony, and KE5ICX, Tom. Okay, anybody on Echolink want to jump in?
This is Kilo Foxtrot 5, Papa Delta Sierra, Billy and Sherman, and yes, I have seen the movie and I've read the book.
Echolink, we have KF5PDS, Billy, and any other check-ins from any means right now, please.
Echo Bravo Bravo, David in Dallas. I saw the movie in high school.
W5EBB, David. Okay, well, we'll take more check-ins later, maybe, if anybody wants to come along. So let's get started. Let's talk about the plot first, and tell us what you think about that. KE5ZYO, Jay, go ahead.
Like here in the United States, but they're pretty much everywhere, on every corner, walking down the street, especially on the tube lines.
Right, N5HYP, Tom.
Well, that was quick. This is N5HYP. Yes, Holly and Anna watched the movie just a few minutes ago, just finished it off. Anna was actually quite impressed with the fact that she thought it did a pretty good job of representing the book. It was a very disconcerting story in that it showed a just a very depressing view of what happens when a government wants to control what everybody thinks and feels. Boy, it kind of has some sense of reality for today. It was not a family-friendly movie. As far as the presentation goes, let's just put it that way. It was very interesting, and it was, like I said, it causes you to think a little bit. I thought it carried the story fairly well, and so did Anna. And so that's it for now. Back to net. This is N5HYP.
Okay, thanks, Tom. KC5OZT. Carolyn, go ahead. Well, it's a very interesting plot. But you sort of feel sorry for the guy, and yet, you know, just looking at the way everybody is manipulated, it's sort of I think that makes you think, rather than being, you know, a lot of action and stuff like that. I guess that's the best way to describe it. KC5OZT. Okay, KF5TSK. Burl, go ahead.
That's KF5TSK. My, I guess, analysis of the movie was, I saw the elite as their lifestyle actually was limited. They didn't have anything that they really enjoyed. There was no art, no literature. But what did they enjoy? Torture, brainwashing. They wanted a confession, and then they wanted to execute someone. And in a way, I saw it as they were executing the seniors. One of the things that I thought was, or seemed to be throughout the whole movie, was everyone seemed to have as many cigarettes as they wanted. But supposedly one of the things was rationed was chocolate, but I only saw Winston eat chocolate as a child and not as an adult. KF5TSK, back to net.
Okay. NT5TM. Tony, go ahead.
Well, are we just starting with the characters for the first round, or the plot, or do we have specific rounds?
First round is plot, but, you can talk about anything you want to. It's just to keep some kind of coherence to this, so go ahead.
I guess starting with the plot, something that Erin echoed Burl's comment, that their lives were so very poor, and she continued that with, because of that, the only thing that they can think of to rebel, it's not as if they've been reading Dostoevsky here, is to just do the things they're not supposed to. Set up almost like a mock nuclear family with love, and she wears a dress at one point, and they're not original thinkers. They can only just rebel by taking what the party says is good and doing ungood instead. Does a very good job of adapting the book. Erin especially liked, speaking of the book, when O'Brien gives the book hidden in the dictionary to Winston, the way they compress that and make that more subtle. And in fact, overall, the movie keeps the plot moving by trusting the audience. That's very nice. Not everything is explained the way it is in a modern American movie. We just see things written on slips of paper and notice Winston's looks at others. They keep it moving by, there is some explaining, but they keep it moving by minimizing the explaining, which really does help serve the plot. Our initial plot comments will have lots to say about characterization in the next round, NT5 TM.
K5 ICX Tom, I know you have some opinions.
Well, thank you, Brenda. And yeah, this film is quite amazing in a number of different ways. Of course, it gives the impression, and I kind of cheated and read a little bit of sort of the notes version of this, but the whole thing seems as though it's been going on for a very, very long time. Everybody is weary. There's nothing left. England itself has been dominated by some mysterious superpower that's out there and drained its resources. This sounds an awful lot like after World War II and the Soviet era and the Iron Curtain and all of that, taken to an extreme, except the difference here is that somebody took over, somebody managed to take England over after the war, perhaps. It's an alternate reality, I suppose, but it taken to the extreme, you can see what would happen. And this is partially what happened with Germany after World War II and, of course, the Iron Curtain that fell on Eastern Europe. I thought, there's a lot of dread in all of this when you're watching it. I mean, it just gets very depressing. You want to go and find something and stick it in yourself because it's a very depressing movie. But after it's over, it does have a tendency to coalesce in your head. And as such, it provides you with kind of an interesting perspective as to, how things could be, what they always can be, because history is replete with instances of totalitarianism taking over republics, not the least of which is the Roman Empire, or the Roman Republic, which became an empire in and of itself and then collapsed upon itself in the end. So there's plenty of examples in real history of this, including when this book was written and when this movie was being portrayed. So even though it's supposed to be in the future, which is what's mentioned here in the thing, it's just transposing two numbers. It was 1948 when the book was written, and then published in 49. But it really is a contemporary piece then, but it is a contemporary piece today. I'll stop at this point. There's plenty to say about this movie, but I found it quite depressing and inspiring in different ways. Kind of a weird thing. Back to you, KE5ICX.
Okay, thanks, Tom. Billy, KO5PDS, go ahead.
Great. Well, thank you, Brenda. Yeah. Well, the first time that I saw this movie, I was in high school, so I believe it was EBB who said he also had seen it in high school for the first time. Yeah, I saw it in 1984, and it was required reading for us. We read 1984 and saw the movie 1984 in 1984. So it had tremendous impact on me as a teenager in high school. I thought that the movie did an excellent job with keeping true to the book. So I had recently read the book and then saw the movie when it came out, and I remember being very pleased with it. And watching it as an adult now, recently, you see flecks of your own society in this, and you can see just how bad it could become if we were to allow it so, so it's definitely a story to keep alive throughout the ages just so that we don't turn into it. But you can, as an adult, it's interesting, I picked up on a lot of different things than I did when I was a teenager. So I'll talk more about that as we go through. But yeah, the plot, yes, Tom said, incredibly depressing. And they really brought that out, the despair, the hopelessness, through the characters and the scenery and the locations where they filmed, which at the end of the credits, I like that they said that they had filmed in and around London during the time April to June 1984, around the time that the author had in mind. So they really tried to be faithful to the book and the wishes of the author, which always helps a story. And I totally agree with Tony that they don't explain everything and leave stuff for you to figure out, and that speaks to the fact that they were playing to an intelligent audience. They weren't trying to insult the intelligence of the audience at all by explaining every thing. And I always also love that they didn't leave it, it's not tied up in a nice, neat bow at the end. And life is not that way. It's like we came into this movie, into Winston's world, and we left him at the end, and to know, he was, still there. And of course we'll talk more about characters, but it's like kind of you just come into this movie and into this character's world, and then leave him where he was, just at that moment. And there's no nice, neat tying up of loose ends or explaining or resolution, which really makes it real world, and adds to that just the despair of the story, that he's going to just go on, or will he, eventually die, or, at the hands of the establishment. So it leaves you with a number of questions, and I always say anytime a movie leaves you talking about it and thinking about it, then it's an excellent movie. So with that, and I also love the music too, and I'm sure we'll talk about music later. So I'll leave my comments on those areas for the later rounds. So this is KFI PDS, back to Nat.
W5EBB, David, go ahead.
All right, can I get a quick radio check? I'm in my attic to improve reception. W5EBB.
You're a little weak, but totally understandable. Go ahead.
Well, I actually started to watch the old 1950s version of this, not realizing it was the contemporary one that we were going to talk about. But it's a very interesting, the black and white version is very accurate. It predicts well how things could be. I'm going to take a bit of a tongue-in-cheek, contrarian view and say this is more of a utopian type of movie. Or oppressing the people and controlling and managing them, are actually open and honest about what they're doing. W5EVP.
Do we have anybody new that wants to check in? Well, this is W5OZL. This is a hard movie for me to watch. During those extended torture scenes, I came real close to turning it off, or at least looking away. I almost cannot endure things like that. But in many ways, it hit the mark. It touched a really raw nerve for me. The fear of someone controlling my thoughts, my speech, what I do, my movements, everything about my life to be controlled like that is just a frightening concept. And what I think is even more frightening is that most everybody just kind of accepted this and went along with it and didn't rebel at all. You think if it happened here and now, people would be in revolt, or at the very least, you might try and counter this depressing society by maybe planting some flowers, or writing poetry, or putting some murals on those gray walls, or dressing up with a little color. But people, as Burl said, they didn't have any art. They had no beauty. They had, even the music they had was just awful. and not at all inspiring. And people had just been totally robbed of their humanity. But our hero, Winston, his consciousness gets elevated a little bit, and he starts to think and starts to rebel. And then in the end, he loses the fight. So it is just an utterly depressing, the whole game is lost. And, in that effect, it was extremely successful in making us just hate this situation. And it touched me on a very visceral level. It just... I almost couldn't watch the thing. Okay, let's go back on our rotations. Let's talk about characterization, the characters. We'll start up here with JKE5ZYO. Go ahead.
Double plus good. As far as Winston's character is concerned, there's a little spark of humanity and existence, and still, despite all that, he still manages to
N5HYP Tom. Go ahead.
Hello, Brenda and the group. This is N5HYP. Yeah, I mean, overall, you had the society as a whole. It was just pretty much the rule of Big Brother and the rule of the thought police. Winston had this bit of individuality that he was trying to hang on to, and he kind of thought he had gotten to that with the girl, that she was kind of the spark of his individuality, but then whether Big Brother did get a hold of them, did get a hold of him, and eventually broke his spirit, and that's really sad. It just, to me, again, I'm just sad because I do believe that God created humanity much more than that, and if man can break us down to basically to not being human, not really wanting to have freedom, not being willing to even try to have freedom, that's pretty sad. That was I think what the author and what the movie was trying to show is trying to show that we can't allow ourselves to come to that point. So that's what I've got for now. This is N5HYP. Back to Matt.
KC5OZT. Carolyn, go ahead.
There's a lot of that, and yet, like he said, he had a spark of individuality with him. Okay, Julia did. So that they got together, so to speak. And if these just two people have this spark, you sort of wondered how many other people maybe had the spark it like this, and we're expressing individual, whatever you call individual humanity, and you hope that maybe some of them were not being caught, but they can't have been the only two that were that way and were taking steps against it, and that's what I'm thought, KT50ZT.
Okay, next up, KF5TSK Burl. Go ahead.
This is KF5TSK. Well, one of the things that I thought was real unusual is one of the announcements they made was the number of, I think, civil unions was declining, and yet Winston and Julia were arrested for having an affair. One of the things that kept bothering me through the whole movie was everyone was smoking, and it was like, well, where's the tobacco coming from? That all of London looked like it looked like a dump, and you couldn't even see the street. There was just papers and trash laying around. I noticed all of the vehicles, the military vehicles, were new. Everything else, the train, the locomotive was, as old as it could be. It seems strange that everyone was, trying to search and find a razor blade, but everyone was well shaved, and it was like, it's there, you just have to go and look for it. That's my observation so far. KF5TSK back to net.
NT5TM Tony.
Thank you, Brenda. We were very impressed by the contributions of the characters. Aaron at first didn't even realize that was John Hurt because he looked so ghastly. I thought he looked half dead to start with, and looked, after that torture, he was very difficult to look at. He just looked awful and was convincingly completely beaten down and defeated. The characters were very well portrayed. Even random people. When in the 2-minute hate that opens the movie, we see such a range of emotions. All the characters are contributing. He may have some dreams, he may have a spark, but his dreams are so limited. He doesn't even know what a utopia would look like. He remembers his mother in a bombed-out wasteland. He dreams of a countryside, but the countryside is empty. Does it have a happy town in it? Is it full of laughing children? He doesn't know what to populate this countryside with because he can't even imagine what a better life would be. As Aaron pointed out, there were some feminist writers at the time of this movie who were very unhappy with these characters, that the most transgressive thing they could imagine was to cohabit with intent to form a traditional nuclear family, just like the ordinary ones that existed at the time the movie was released. But the party is really winning. Two of the characters that are not played by specific actors are the party and the scenery. And the party it's showing us something that perhaps we shouldn't let happen, but certainly can. Orwell had seen the show trials of the 30s in the Soviet Union. They were broadcast and filmed, and even with much less sophisticated techniques.
people into making these exuberant confessions, and that were all very formulaic about how they plotted to subvert the will of the people and wreck the industry and weaken the Soviet Union, and this sort of stuff really does work and has to be watched out for because it's very real. The other great character is this dismal scenery. Something that Orwell really got right. It's tough to make predictions about the future, but he nailed this one. Shabby and dingy and awful everything was in communist countries. The worn-out trains, the collapsing buildings, there really were cities in the Eastern Bloc that had bomb damage in them until after the end of the Cold War, left over from World War II, because no one fixed it up. There was just junk. That may not have been true in the show places like Sarajevo or East Berlin or Moscow, but there really were places like that that were still being used as movie locations for years and years after the war. To know where to even stop talking here, because there's so much to say about each character. The way that they're so beaten down, and Aaron talked to me a lot about how their eyes were dead. The party really does stamp out their love. Winston talks about the real betrayal would not be ratting on each other because they know everyone is forced to do that, but to change their feelings. And of course their feelings are crushed and they're forced to change. So there's nothing, not your innermost thought, not your nightmares, that is out of the reach of the party. Someone did mention utopia, and that was kind of an insightful comment, because in a way, a lot of these ideologies that totalitarian states espouse are at least outwardly utopian. We will build the workers' paradise, and that belief that you can force a perfect world on people leads to a lot of violence and destruction, and generally does not produce the utopia it promises. So, there's just so much to say. I'll stop for now. NT5TM.
KE5ICX, you're up.
I guess I didn't put myself in the list here. I didn't know I was next, but that's okay because I guess I am. Some of this is, characters are beaten down and somehow not able to respond in any sort of coherent way, or in a way of putting together. I think it was mentioned earlier too. Creating something that was better, a better world, or a better instance. Painting things, or raising flowers, or doing something that takes away from the abysmalness of the moment. I don't know. We sometimes have this happen in our own lives when it comes to what we do, for a living, I suppose. We all have examples of that, not to any extreme or anything like that, but we can sympathize and empathize with characters to a certain extent in that way. I know I'm probably misstepping on that because this is a whole category above and beyond, but I kind of think that you can inch towards that sort of thing if you're not careful and not self-aware, or find ways around it. I think that you can become the indifferent individuals, whether you be part of the outer party with everything around you, or if you are the inner party, I guess, and or whether you are an individual who, I don't know, the bartender, for example, is totally indifferent to everything going on, characters coming and going. You'd think a bar, of all places, would be the most interesting place you could be, even in the best of times, or even in the worst of times, but it turns out it's even worse than that. But I think it's because the characters have pretty much determined that there's nothing they can do about it. The thing is there's an enlightenment, and that is seen when we see Winston and Julia together, and they take the apartment above with the guy that they think can be trusted and is one of them, and turns out he's not. And geez, how many times has that happened to us when we think we can fight it and talk to someone only to find out you cannot. And then therefore, like the secret police and everything else, you can't say anything. So I don't know. It's a tough movie to watch. I see parallelisms. I see things that go on in everybody's lives, and then you say, oh my God, how can you say that? Well, you can, because it exists. But at the same time, how far do you let it go? Well, as far as you can stand it. So, in this film that can be interpreted on a personal level, I think that's the most important part. And I think that these characters represent that, both from the standpoint of what we like or admire when they come out of their shells, and as much as they don't. That's it from me, KE5ICX.
PDS. Go ahead, Philly.
Yeah, the characters, there's a lot of different levels for me. And yeah, we're pulled into the outer party, and it seems like that's where the most conflict in ideology and sensibility lies, is within the outer party, because the inner party, they apparently have whatever luxury exists in the world. You know, like they probably get more chocolate than anybody. And they have, you know, when Julia brings in her loot that she gets, you know, when they get the apartment, she's got real coffee and tins of fresh milk and real jam and real loaves of bread, you know, and she got that from, you know, some inner party, you know, place, and she was like, there's nothing that they don't have. So they're the elite, and they totally know what's going on, how they're manipulating the outer party and proletariat levels, but they reap more benefits, so they, you know, they totally can separate the duplicitous nature in their minds. But the outer party, it seems like they have more of a struggle mentally reconciling to this world. You know, Winston definitely does, because his character seems to be in charge of labeling unpersons, you know, and rewriting articles, you know, to match what has actually happened, and then going back and rewriting, creating fake news, you know. I was thinking about that as a, you know, Ministry of Truth. You know, all the names are very ironic for all the ministries. They seem to do the exact opposite of what the name employs. And so, you know, he is rewriting and changing, but he's also, you know, marking out the unpersons. And they're people that he sees and can, you know, he looks over, you know, at Syme, you know, and he's right there, but he's, in the article, he's marking him as an unperson. And so, to me, that's what makes Winston have the most conflict, is because he is employed in rewriting history, and so that causes him to doubt the world he lives in and question his reality. And then, of course, the proletariat, they're oblivious. They live in poverty, but they're not party members, so they get on with life and probably have a more normal life, even though it's one in poverty and probably squalor. They seem to be happier because they're just oblivious. I guess they, as long as the system works for them, they're not going to question it. They're just happy being the way they're being. So to me, it's the people in the outer party that are the most manipulated, obviously. The 2-minute hate definitely shows that. I found it very interesting that the outer party members were the ones screaming and ranting at the screen, but you notice the inner party members sitting in the front couple of rows, they're sitting there very solemnly, like they're actually listening to the Goldstein speech. And to me, it's like they were, you know, sitting there, and probably maybe, to me, are they wondering, you know, if these outer party members actually sat down and were quiet and listened to this, would it make them cotton to the fact of how the world is being, you know, manipulated around them, and would it cause them to revolt? And maybe they're sitting there thinking, yeah, keep yelling, because if you actually listened to this, you might get wise and want to overturn the system. So I found that very interesting. I noticed that as an adult that I did not really think about as a teenager. Let me reset, because I got a couple more comments. One thing, mentioning about the Chestnut Tree Cafe, Winston was interested in old rhymes. There was the oranges and lemons rhyme that he was slowly constructing through the book, and in the movie they alluded to that just a little bit. They didn't go into great detail, but also the globe, he was in search of old things. The globe with the piece of coral inside of it, and interested in the old rhymes and old poetry and things like that, and keeping a diary, things that were very traditional. But you notice he didn't go into the chestnut tree until the end, after he had come back from the Ministry of Love. So it seems like the chestnut tree was where all the unpersons gathered. It seemed like you didn't go in there unless you had come out of the ministry after having been declared an unperson. So to me, it was kind of where the unpeople could gather, but they couldn't talk to each other because they'd been so broken down. And like Tom said, usually a bar or a cafe is a place of meeting and congregating and community and laughter and fun, and this place was the total opposite of that. It was just the souls had been sucked out of these people, and all they could do is sit there and just kind of self-medicate with gin, which I noticed that, Burl noticed this chain smoking. I noticed the chain drinking. They were always just drinking that Victory gin, which in the book they describe as tasting oily, so it must have tasted awful, but it was enough to dull their senses so that they could just get through the day-to-day life. And looking up, if you look up, they said that the chocolate ration got increased to 25 grams. That's not even an ounce of chocolate per week. So no wonder folks are unhappy. They're denied that's a most basic pleasure. Anything that's pleasurable is denied them, but they're fed just this tiny little bit of chocolate a week, I think to torture them. That to me would just be torture if all I was allowed was less than an ounce of chocolate a week. I would, it would drive you mad, So those are my thoughts about characterization. The inner party is manipulating the outer party, giving them just enough things to dull their minds and to keep them occupied, because I guess smoking keeps you occupied. I'm not a smoker, so I don't know, but and enough gin to keep your mind numb, and changing the language so that you can't put together, coherent thoughts to argue or rebuff anything. So it is a very soul-draining world, and all of the characters, just go through this life. It's not even life to me, it's just existing. So, I have other comments for other rounds on other topics, but as far as characterization goes, I think all the characters are very well portrayed, true to the book, and it was just heartbreaking to see Winston at the end. It just tore my heart out to see how he had been so broken and teary-eyed. It was really very disturbing. So, with that, I will return it to you. This is KFI PDS, back to
WFBB, go ahead.
The 1950s version, when Winston is first being questioned, he's instructed that to be a member of the party comes with both privileges and responsibilities. And I think that's what compels some to hold on to what the party provides them and not risk losing that. Their motivation then is to keep what they have when they turn somebody else in. It's this whole underlying tension of not knowing who to trust. Who's the good, who's on my side, who's subversively not on my side and just setting me up. It's that cloud of uncertainty and anxiety that also weighs on the characters, I think. W5EBB.
B5OZL. Any new check-ins? I think one of the things this society destroys is the thing that keeps people going, and that's human contact, friendship, romance, the sense of belonging, or a band of brothers. You look at like the POWs, Vietnam, held for 7 or 8 years, and they had little codes they'd tap out to their to the other prisoners. They just had to have some kind of contact. But the leaders of this society have destroyed that, or even pretty much the desire for it. People are not friendly. They're not playing racquetball, or cards, or having hootenannies, or anything sociable, and that leads to a lot of the depressiveness and this whole thing of, celibacy and destroying relationships. You just wonder why people would have bought into that. A lot of these controlling societies that we see in dystopian movies has a ruling class that lives in absolute lavishness, like in the Hunger Games. The ruling party just, they live like kings, and you find that also in the real world. Russia, you had the party elite with all kinds of wonderful benefits, and then the poor people are practically starving. But you didn't see that lavish lifestyle so much in this. You knew they got coffee and chocolate and wine, but you didn't see the kind of opulence that you often see in these kind of situations. As far as the characters, Hurt was just amazing in this, in capturing the mood. But some of the most disturbing scenes were the children. Everybody else is dressed in rags and dreary gray things, but all the kids have these spiffy uniforms that are oddly reminiscent of little German kids, Nazi kids. And that seeing a girl staring at that news program like it's a cartoon was just, to me, chilling. And these kids would turn their parents in a heartbeat. And then they're on the train, they're singing that insipid song, and with essentially no expressions. And the adults there, they weren't really enjoying it all that much. But the content of the song is, we're the children and we're the future. And you have that theme a lot in society. I remember as a child, we were going to fix the mess that our parents had made, and we're seeing that today with kids. That, we're going to do it better because we're smarter and we're young and we're strong. And you got that sense with these children that they were the future. And to me, that was kind of chilling to see that. They were almost like a different class of society with the little uniforms, living in this gray hovel with their folks, and nobody seemed to notice the real difference. Right, I'll turn it over. I guess we're going back to the top. You can talk about anything you want to at this point. KE5ZYO. Go ahead, Jay.
Episode on PBS, it's been a while, and as oppressive as that regime is, they had some secret cameras in there. And out in the countryside, there are some people there taking these little steps to rebel. There was a lady who basically, and army, I guess, or officers, whomever they were, tried to stop her. I mean, she dressed them down, and they were so shocked because they weren't used to people fighting back. Her comment about the that spark of individualism and humanity. It just reminds me of the movie The Killing Fields, which who actually survived Pol Pot's in the Khmer Rouge back in the 70s and managed to escape. And but it's also not to say that, you know, totalitarian regimes can't exist, because we know they do. Go back to that.
N5HYP, Tom.
Hello, Brendan and Annette again. This is N5HYP. I think about the fact that if you just pummel people with a representation of what you want them to believe, eventually they will believe it. I mean, we saw with Germany, we've seen with other states how, unfortunately, humans can be very much like lemmings. They will just go all together in mass, and they won't question. Many times do not question, you know, what they're being fed. And I think that's something that we should always question, what we are being fed enough, because if we don't, then we allow people to take this level of control of our lives, and we just cannot allow that. We just can't allow that. Always have a little bit of skepticism. Always have a little bit of a little bit of fight, because if you don't, you lose. And so that's what. And again, Orwell saw Stalin's regime, Hitler's regime. He saw the rise of Mao. How Mao was trying to unify China. Now, another interesting point. Yeah, and my daughter spent 3.5 years in China. What Mao could not do with, totalitarian rule and labor camps and such like that for those who didn't agree, the modern China is doing by giving the people enough economic freedom and enough economic prosperity to make them feel happy enough to not question the fact that they have no say in what their government does or says or whatever. So I guess my point in watching this movie is don't ever just become complacent with what's being said or what's being taught to you. Always question. Always make sure that you don't let truth die. God bless everybody. Talk to you next week. This is N5HYP.
Agree with what he just said. Yeah, it was troubling about the children, and especially having them on the train, and they were being taken. Frankly, it brought back not memories, but memories from World War II. You know, about the trains. Oh, sorry for them. Sorry for nearly everybody in the picture. But, now, this was, 48 before, War II were still, very much alive in, Orwell's mind, and, I don't know if he meant that symbolism or, what, but, like I said, there's these little sparks of individuality, and a small percentage, you hope that they keep that alive. Other Winstons, and maybe that they'll be able to turn things around. Of a hope, anyway. KH50ZT.
Hey, KF5TSK Burl, go ahead.
Well, looking at the movie, the only thing that seemed strange to me was the age of the soldiers, and it was like, in some ways, they were getting rid of their city population. You know, the people who were being executed, it seemed like everybody was 70 or 80 years old, and, you know, it's like they were still in the process of changing the thought and really the curriculum. I think they had the, you know, children inspired that, you know, if your parents are not right, you should turn them in, and I think they had the whole thing figured out as just like, we just need to, you know, clean up our act, and everything will be total, I guess, communist rule. KF5TSK back to net.
Okay, NT5TM, Tony.
A thought from Aaron. She really, Richard Burton changed a lot. Of course, this was near the end of his life, but he still had a great voice and did a great job as O'Brien. So, up on Burl's earlier comment about, wait, if there's this dire razor blade shortage, why is everyone so clean-shaven? We never see anyone consuming any media other than a telescreen and the book. There's almost no point in Winston's editing the newspapers. It might just be make-work to help drive him mad. I don't know. But yeah, maybe Aaron speculates, maybe the inner party reads the newspapers, but we certainly don't see the outer party who patrols with them. I'd like to echo the comments about the children. Aaron reminds me that that's something that was important about the Hitler Youth, too. They got to go outside the city and have bright new clothes and had lots of singing and games and even big giant mass pit fights. And, yeah. Something else that I learned from Aaron years ago, she was taking a Holocaust lit class and was telling me something that lots of totalitarian states have in common. An important way to get people to oppress one another is you can't have any one person do too much oppressing. You didn't have one person perpetrate the whole Holocaust. They used a lot of
bureaucracy and a lot of division of labor. Well, I don't gas people. I just sort the clothes. I don't sort their clothes. I just keep track of how much money we get by selling their watches. I don't herd people at the cattle cars. I just make rail schedules. There's an important element of dividing responsibilities that no one has to do too much, and just about every totalitarian state that we know of has that in common. So to echo Tom N5H5P's really good comments about the importance of doubt and the danger of complacency, be weary of that division of labor and always wonder about how your job fits into the big picture. Someone had commented earlier that we have sympathy, but we have to temper it a little bit. Aaron echoes that about Winston as well. He was unhappy, but he was perfectly content to do his job of plotting even people who were sitting next to him out of the newspapers. He didn't think about how that fit in the big picture. So those are 3 cents. I've overspent my budget. SC5, see ya. Great net.
K5ICX, Tom.
The things that I have to kind of like compartmentalize on this thing is that, and I mentioned this earlier, is that these are not the victors. These are the folks that have been subjugated. In some way, shape, or form, whatever Oceania is, it's a superpower, and England or Britain or whatever Airstrip 1 has been pulled into that regime, and now they are being told what to do and how to do it, and then those who know the past know the future, and those who run the future run the past, I think that, and some of the other comments which are kind of like thrown away in the movie, such as no sex, none of that, I think suggests that not only are we running the society down, you're doing these things, you're also doing them, and then you're, I think that's a part of it as well, which adds bleakness of the story, is that these people not only are subjugated and unable to respond, but the fact that at some point they're going to be vaporized, they're going to disappear. I thought that the one thing I will say is the ending is a bit confusing to me, and it's been so long since I've read the book, I don't know. I can't remember how exactly it ended because I was in junior high, and as such I wasn't really interested in really bad endings. But I think that in this case, this thing probably, Winston would have died. And in the end of this one, he does not. It's a living dead, but it's not a death in the traditional sense. With all the crumbling buildings and everything around it, who knows? Maybe Oceania as a society, as we know from the folks that are in the inner party, have a little better lives and are given that opportunity to go ahead and keep everybody else under control. I wonder how long their days are numbered. Are they part of the bigger oceanic thing? Are they part of the society that keeps things together, but once everything falls apart, where do they stand in all of this? Are they next? I think it was kind of interesting that was not explored, at least in the film. Maybe there wasn't time for it, but I just sometimes wonder where does this all end? And I guess that's it. So those are my comments for this evening. KE5ICX.
PDS Billy.
Yeah, Tom, I'm not sure if he really does die at the end of the book. If I remember correctly, he imagines a gun being pointed at his head. remember if it was actually what happened, if he actually did get shot and died at the end, but it seemed to me like he just imagined it, and it was symbolic of his final obliteration of all the rebellious thoughts that he had had. I think it might have been just symbolic of him, just finally becoming reindoctrinated back and having a full love of Big Brother. It may have just been a symbolic thing. But yeah, at the end of the book, it seemed like he eventually reconciled to the whole idea of the love of Big Brother. But in the movie, he didn't. It seemed still open, because I loved how he was at the chessboard and he wrote 2 + 2 = in the dust on the table, but then he didn't finish it. His hand hesitated, and then he just put his hand down. And it was like he didn't know what to write anymore. To me, it seemed like his mind was still in conflict, and when he says, "I love you" at the end and he's crying, is he saying, thinking about Julia, the tearful, how the affair, he was really still in love with her, or was it really finally his surrender, unwilling surrender to the love of Big Brother, and that's why he was crying, had tears in his eyes, and that's what really tore my heart out. It just still seemed so, not final. He did not have this blissful, love for Big Brother. He was still very much, I think, an unwilling participant in this world. And, we think the world is horrible. Just think what that world is going to be like in about 40 years when or 50 years when all the people Winston's age finally die, because Winston's generation were the last ones to remember the way the world had been. He had actually, some happy memories of childhood, but he had remembered, how civilization used to be, and now and saw it turn into this. But what is it going to be like? The kids, as y'all mentioned about the Hitler Youth, is like they are fully indoctrinated in their world. Those kids, were brought up knowing nothing else. And what's that world going to be like in, say, 40 or 50 years when all of Winston's generation have died, the transitional generation have died off, and all the kids, are running the world, the ones that Winston's seeing being brought up thoroughly indoctrinated when they're in power. That's, when the cycle, the old world would be truly dead. And, they weren't living. It was just the war was ongoing to sustain society. There was never going to be any intention of winning it. It's just perpetuating the wartime efforts to keep that society running. So there are no victors. There are no winners. And everybody is a loser, because, you have a society like that, no one prospers. Even the people on top, they might reap some benefits, but their world is not, good, so no one prospers, no one wins, and it just keeps rolling on and on, this juggernaut of this wartime equilibrium, keeping this thing just bouncing around, perpetuating itself. I think eventually the despair would just overtake. Nature will find a way to, resolve, and who knows, maybe what would happen in the future of that world. But I just think we think it's bad. Think about in 50 years when those kids grow up and are in power, how bad it will be. So I think we didn't see the worst of what was to come, and that, I think, is a great testament to Orwell's writing, that it would fuel our imagination and our discussion. I've really enjoyed our discussion tonight. So with that, I'll return it to you. I look forward to hearing about what we're going to do next week. So this is KF5PDS, back to Met.
W5EBB.
Well, there are so many other books and movies that parallel this. It's often difficult to keep them separate. A Brave New World, Logan's Run, Things to Come. The list is vast. But common to most of them is as I kind of stated earlier, the powers that be and the authorities and the rules and the instruments by which they implement those rules is well known and understood. It would be a controversial but interesting debate to compare those arms of I guess, implementation of A Brave New World or 1984 to today. As filters, essentially. We have free speech, we have a free press, but our free speech only goes as far as our voice can be heard, or our words are propagated through the internet that we type. I believe that today only a privileged few people actually are heard, but it's not obvious, it's not apparent, and I think that's the key to maintaining a society that's docile and productive, is to provide a pretty mask that may be an illusion of what they believe they're living under, you know, the style of the lifestyle, the etc. But it's easy understanding human nature to know how to coerce without a person actually realizing what's going on. It would be an interesting debate. W5FC.
Well, this is W5OZL. I find it rather important that Winston's main job was changing history, and I think that's a big part of propaganda. In North Korea, those people don't know real history because they've been told the state's version of it, and if they escape, they're quite surprised to learn the truth. So I think that's part of the propaganda tool to give people a false sense of what happened before. Nobody in this movie seems to do any real work. I didn't see factories or farmers or anything like that. I was just kind of curious about that. Even in harsh societies like North Korea, they have these big festivals and parades with lots of color and flags and flowers and things like that. It's the bread and circus idea that makes people think that the government is doing something for them. Anyway, just some random thoughts. I think that's all I have for tonight. Does anybody else want to say anything? WB5OZL. T5TM, go ahead, Tony.
And a music question from my personal library. Aaron recommends the book, The Anatomy of Fascism by Robert O. Paxton. Not specifically about, or not generally about totalitarian, but a good study of fascism, one of his favorite franchises. So it's The Anatomy of Fascism by Robert O. Paxton. On LP, the Eurythmics soundtrack to this movie, which we did not hear in the version that Tom linked to, and was very controversial because it was apparently imposed on the film against the wishes of the filmmakers by the investors. So it is a quite good album, and it doesn't fit this movie in any way whatsoever, let me tell you. It is a good album, though. I just wondered if anyone else has the album or has heard any of that music with the movie, if they've seen another version that uses it, and give us comments. NT5TM.
Anybody else have comments? Go ahead.
KF5 PDS with a comment.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment to Tony that I don't have the full soundtrack, but I do have the 45's Sex Crime and Julia. I love the Julia song that Annie Lennox sings. I just love her voice, and would love to get a hold of a copy of the 1984 soundtrack, but I never did buy the full album. I just bought a couple of 45's of a couple of songs that I liked, and I still have them. So it's cool that you have those too, Tony. I love talking 80s music with you. All right, just wanted to make that mention. I love that the Eurythmics, they pulled in, someone that was very popular at the time, and of course David Stewart is a wonderful score writer and orchestrator. So, and he and Annie Lennox, of course, have the wonderful Eurythmics, and they were very much in their heyday the time this movie was made. So that was one of the reasons also that I went to see it. But I didn't hear any of their music in the movie hardly. So anyway, I just wanted to make some comments about the music since Tony mentioned it. So again, this is KFI PDS, back to net.
Anybody else?
JDW.
JDW, go ahead.
Comments, and people have alluded to and actually come right out and said it's amazing how many aspects of this movie still exist in our life today, or in countries and stuff like that. So it's just one of those warnings, I guess. Also reminds me of a psychological thing where people get so devoted to a captor, when they're only given certain privileges or just some slightest little privilege or something, they actually develop a devotion or loyalty to their captive, even though all else is taken from them. Almost like I guess like Tom said, during the war there was a lot of things to control people, and I was even remembering the Patty Hearst thing back a while back, a few years back in the 60s or 70s, whenever that was. But I was just thinking about those things. Good discussion tonight. K5 JW.
Anybody else?
W5 EBB.
W5 EBB.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that's called the Stockholm Syndrome when you identify with your captors in that manner. W5 EBB.
Now the whole idea of brainwashing and all that was a big deal back in the 40s and 50s and even into the 60s. You don't hear so much of it anymore like you used to. Okay, anybody else?
JDW.
K5 JDW.
Do you mind? I should have remembered that. Thanks for filling me in on that. And I guess the thing you're talking about today still exists. It's called advertising. Hi. Anyway, K5 JW.
Well, I'm going to fantasize about an alternate ending where Julia and Winston accidentally meet on the street, and then they just escape and go to this forest where they find an enclave of other rebels that are actually reading books and having philosophy discussions, and they live happily ever after. This is W5OZL. Any other comments or check-ins? Hey, midnight. I think we have done this thing justice. Thank you for all your wonderful comments, and insightful musings. And Tom, do we have a movie for next week?
Miss Brenda, we always have a movie for next week. Next week's movie, oh, and by the way, I had a list, and I've lost it. If you don't see it on the Facebook page, Afterglow Movie, and I add the on-deck stuff, just send me an email. Just send it to, I'll tell you what, nets@w5fc.org is best. Movies that you would like to see. In case I haven't acknowledged you, I think I missed some from a couple of weeks ago. That wasn't on purpose. So the next movie we have up is War Games from 1983. That's next week. A little lighter fare, but I think it'll be a lot of fun. So next week's movie, War Games, 1983. That's it from me, KE5ICF.
Well, we're going to close down the net. This is WB5OZL Clear.
Great movie choice. Good job, Brenda and Tom, and thank you, everybody, for the comments. NT5TM. I love listening to this net.
I'll venture out and say the same thing. I learned more than I could ever imagine saying about this net myself. I really enjoy it. I love people's comments. Everybody's got some really great insight into the thing, and that's why I keep coming back for more. I think it's excellent. And that's it for me, KE5ICX. I'm clear.